The message that ruined my life arrived at 2 in the morning. I was half asleep when my phone started vibrating across my nightstand. At first I ignored it. Then it rang again, and again, and again. By the fourth call, I finally grabbed it. The caller ID made my stomach tighten instantly. Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her in months. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. She was crying. Not normal crying. The kind of crying people do when their world has already fallen apart. Ryan. Her voice cracked. He's dying. I sat upright immediately. My heart started pounding. What happened? There was a long silence. Then she whispered the words that would haunt me for the rest of my life. He has bone marrow cancer. The room went completely still. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't even process what she had just said. Because 3 months earlier, I had begged for exactly that. And that's the part of this story nobody will believe. Honestly, sometimes I don't believe it myself. 3 months before that phone call, Ryan Cooper had destroyed my life. Not financially, not physically, emotionally. The worst kind of destruction. The kind you carry long after everyone else moves on. Ryan wasn't just my boyfriend. He was supposed to be my future. We'd been together for 4 years. 4 years of birthdays, road trips, apartment hunting, late-night conversations about marriage. The kind of relationship where people start referring to you as a married couple before you're actually married. I trusted him completely. That's what made it hurt so much. The betrayal wasn't some random drunken mistake. It was planned, careful, calculated. For nearly 8 months, Ryan had been sleeping with my best friend, Emma, the woman who stood beside me every time I cried, the woman who listened to me talk about him, the woman who helped me pick out his birthday gifts. Every time I complained about relationship problems, she already knew the answers, because she was sleeping with him. I found out accidentally. A stupid mistake. One text message. One unlocked phone. 1 second that changed everything. People always imagine they'll scream when they discover something like that. Throw things. Lose control. I didn't. I just stared. My brain couldn't accept what my eyes were seeing. Then Ryan walked into the room, saw the phone in my hand, and immediately knew. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. Everything was already over. The next few weeks were the darkest period of my life. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped answering calls. I became obsessed with understanding why. What had I done wrong? What was she giving him that I wasn't? Why wasn't I enough? Questions like that are poison, because they don't have answers. Not answers that help anyway. One night, around 3 in the morning, I found myself scrolling through strange corners of the internet.
Forum.
Message boards. Stories. Most of it was nonsense. People talking about luck.
Manifestation.
Energy. Revenge rituals. Ridiculous stuff. Stuff I would have laughed at 6 months earlier. But heartbreak changes people. Pain makes you irrational. And for the first time in my life, I wanted revenge. Not justice. Not closure. Revenge. I wanted him to hurt the way I was hurting. I wanted him to wake up feeling sick every morning. I wanted him to lose sleep, lose happiness, lose everything. And somewhere in that emotional disaster, I found a post. The title caught my attention instantly. For those who were betrayed. Looking back, it sounds stupid, embarrassing even. But at the time, I was desperate. The post described a ritual. Simple, harmless. At least that's how it seemed. Write the person's name. Write what they took from you. Burn the paper. Then bury the ashes. That was it. No demons. No blood. No weird chanting. Just symbolic nonsense. Therapy disguised as superstition. At least that's what I told myself. So I did it. One rainy Saturday night. Alone. Angry. Heartbroken. I wrote his name. Ryan Cooper. Then I wrote everything he took from me. Trust. Sleep. Confidence. For years. The future. The list kept growing. By the end, the paper looked more like a confession than a curse. I burned it in an old metal bowl on my balcony. Watched the flames consume every word. Then buried the ashes in a small patch of dirt behind my apartment. And honestly, I felt better afterward. Not because magic worked, because I'd finally released some of the anger. Or so I thought. Weeks passed, then months. Life slowly improved. I started therapy, started eating normally again, started rebuilding. Ryan and Emma eventually moved in together. People told me that information like it was supposed to hurt. Strangely, didn't. Not anymore. I was finally moving forward. Then Sarah called and told me he was dying. At first I tried to be rational. Cancer happens. People get sick. Coincidences exist. But human brains are terrible at ignoring patterns, especially painful ones. The more I thought about it, the worse it became. 3 months after the ritual. 3 months after I begged the universe to make him suffer. Ryan suddenly develops an aggressive form of cancer. I kept telling myself it meant nothing, that it was random, that I wasn't crazy. Then Sarah called again 2 days later, and said something that made my blood run cold. There's something weird happening. I frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated, like she wasn't sure whether she should continue. Then she finally spoke. Before he got sick, my stomach tightened. Ryan kept saying somebody was watching him. Silence. I laughed nervously. Watching him. He was serious. The fear in her voice sounded genuine. He kept checking windows. She continued, checking security cameras. Looking over his shoulder constantly. I felt uncomfortable immediately. Sarah kept talking. He thought someone was following him. I stared into the darkness of my apartment, trying to convince myself this was coincidence. Just coincidence. But then she said something even worse. The doctors think the cancer had already started before symptoms appeared. My pulse accelerated. What? He was complaining about feeling strange weeks before diagnosis. Weeks before. Weeks before. My mind instantly did the math. And I hated the answer, because weeks before was right around the time I buried those ashes. I barely slept that night. Every creak in my apartment sounded different. Every shadow looked strange. Every memory felt wrong. And around 4 in the morning, while scrolling through social media trying to distract myself, I found something that made my entire body freeze. A photograph, posted 6 weeks earlier. A random picture from a coffee shop. Ryan sitting alone near a window. Nothing unusual. Nothing scary. Until I zoomed in and looked at the reflection in the glass behind him. Because standing outside the coffee shop, partially reflected in the window, was someone who looked exactly like me. And the terrifying part? I had never been there. I stared at the photograph for almost 10 minutes. The longer I looked at it, the worse it became. At first I kept trying to convince myself it wasn't me. Couldn't be me. The picture had been taken in a coffee shop nearly 40 miles away. I had never visited that place. Never even heard of it before. Yet the reflection in the glass looked exactly like me. Same height, same hair, same jacket. Even the posture looked familiar. I zoomed in again. The image became blurry, pixelated, impossible to verify, but the damage was already done. Because once your brain accepts an idea, it becomes incredibly difficult to let it go, especially when fear gets involved. I closed the app and threw my phone across the couch. This is ridiculous. I said it out loud, trying to hear how stupid it sounded, trying to force reality back into place. It was a coincidence, just a reflection, just a random woman, just grief and guilt playing tricks on me. Nothing more. But deep down, I didn't fully believe that. The next morning I called Sarah. I needed facts, not imagination, not paranoia, facts. When she answered, she sounded exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. How is he? There was a pause. Not good. My stomach tightened. He started treatment yesterday. I stared out my apartment window. Part of me hated Ryan. Part of me still loved the version of him I thought existed before everything fell apart. And somehow those two feelings were now fighting inside me every second of every day. Then Sarah said something unexpected. He's asking about you. I froze. What? He keeps bringing up your name. My pulse accelerated. Why? I don't know. The answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. She was hiding something. I could hear it. Sarah. Silence. Tell me. Another pause. Then finally she sighed. Ryan thinks you're involved. Every muscle in my body locked. Involved with what? The cancer. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. Are you serious? He doesn't think you caused the cancer. Then what does he think? Sarah hesitated, then spoke carefully. He's convinced something happened after the breakup. I felt cold. What kind of something? He won't explain. The conversation ended shortly afterward. But my mind wouldn't let it go. Ryan thought something happened. Something connected to me. Something connected to the breakup. And somehow that terrified me more than if he'd simply blamed me. That evening I made a decision. A stupid decision. The kind of decision people only make when curiosity becomes stronger than common sense. I drove to Ryan's neighborhood. I told myself I just wanted answers. Closure. Proof that all of this was nonsense. Nothing supernatural. Nothing mysterious. Just a sick man looking for explanations. The neighborhood looked exactly how I remembered. Clean streets. Small houses. Quiet. Normal. I parked 2 blocks away and sat inside my car. Watching. Thinking. Questioning my own sanity. Then I saw him. And my heart nearly stopped. Ryan stepped outside his house. Except he didn't look like Ryan anymore. Not the Ryan I remembered. He looked older. Thinner. Fragile. Like somebody had taken years from his life. The sight hit me harder than expected. This wasn't the man who betrayed me. This wasn't the man who broke my heart. This was a sick person. A dying person. And suddenly my anger felt very small. Very childish. Very far away. Ryan walked slowly toward his mailbox. Then something strange happened. He froze. Completely. His eyes locked onto something across the street. I followed his gaze. Nothing. Just houses. Trees. Parked cars. Normal life. Yet Ryan looked terrified. Genuinely terrified. He kept staring. Not blinking. Not moving. Just staring. Then he rushed back inside, slamming the front door behind him. My skin crawled, because whatever he saw, he believed it was real. I drove home immediately. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt scared. Not guilty. Not sad. Scared. That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight I opened social media again. I searched Ryan's profile. Most posts were gone. The cancer diagnosis had basically erased his online activity. Then I noticed something unusual. An old post from 2 months earlier. A random picture. Nothing special. Just Ryan standing beside a gas station during a road trip. But the comments caught my attention. One comment simply read, "Who's the woman behind you?" My heart skipped. I clicked the photo, zoomed in, and nearly dropped my phone. Standing in the background, across the parking lot, partially hidden behind another vehicle, was the same figure, the same woman, the same shape, the same jacket, the same resemblance to me. I stared at it in horror, because this wasn't a reflection anymore. This wasn't distorted glass. This was a person, and she looked exactly like me. My hands started shaking. I checked the date. 2 months ago, long before Ryan became seriously ill. Long before most people even knew something was wrong. Then I noticed another comment. Ryan himself had replied. Only 3 words. 3 simple words that instantly made my blood run cold. She follows me. I stopped breathing. The room suddenly felt smaller. Colder. Wrong. My rational brain immediately fought back. Maybe he was joking. Maybe he was talking about someone else. Maybe. Then my phone rang. The sudden sound nearly made me jump out of my skin. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity won. I answered. Hello. For several seconds there was only silence. Then a weak voice spoke. A voice I hadn't heard since the day we broke up. Ryan. Is it really you? My entire body froze. Neither of us spoke. Months of pain. Betrayal. Anger. History. All trapped inside one moment. Finally I found my voice. What do you want? His breathing sounded shaky, unsteady, like speaking itself hurt. Then he asked a question so strange it took me several seconds to process it. Have you been following me? A chill raced through my body.
No.
Silence. Then Ryan whispered something that made my heart stop. Then who is she? Before I could answer, before I could ask what he meant, before I could say anything at all, Ryan began crying. And in the background, I heard another voice, a terrified nurse shouting for help. Then the line went dead. The dead call stayed with me for days. I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. Ryan's voice, the fear, the question. Then who is she? And then the chaos in the background before the line disconnected. Every logical explanation I came up with fell apart the moment I remembered how terrified he sounded. Ryan wasn't acting. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He genuinely believed someone was following him. Someone who looked exactly like me. The next morning I called Sarah again. This time she answered immediately. The exhaustion in her voice sounded worse than before. He had another episode last night. My stomach tightened. What happened? The nurses found him trying to leave the hospital. Leave. He kept saying he had to get away from her. I closed my eyes. The same story again. The same woman. The same fear. The same impossible mystery. Sarah continued quietly. He wasn't sleeping. At all. Maybe an hour or two every night. I rubbed my forehead. Sleep deprivation. Cancer. Stress. Medication. There were 100 possible explanations. But none of them explained the photographs. None of them explained why Ryan seemed convinced that somebody was watching him long before his diagnosis. Then Sarah said something that changed everything. He kept a journal. I froze. A journal. Almost every day. My pulse quickened. What did he write? We don't know. What do you mean? He wouldn't let anybody read it. For some reason that answer made me uneasy, because journals contain truths people never say out loud. The thoughts they hide from everyone else. The thoughts they hide even from themselves. And suddenly I wanted to know what Ryan had been writing. That afternoon I drove to the hospital. Not because I wanted closure. Not because I wanted answers. Because I couldn't stay away anymore. Whatever was happening had become bigger than heartbreak. Bigger than revenge. Bigger than me. The hospital room looked exactly how hospitals always look. Too bright, too clean, too quiet. Machines hummed softly beside the bed. And Ryan looked even worse than he had a few days earlier. For a moment I almost didn't recognize him. His face had become thinner. His skin pale. His eyes sunken. The confident man who once walked through life like he owned it seemed completely gone. When he noticed me standing in the doorway, his eyes widened. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The silence felt strange, because after everything we'd been through, neither of us knew where to begin. Finally, Ryan laughed weakly. You look terrible. I couldn't help smiling. You look worse. For the first time in years, we both laughed. Tiny laugh. A sad laugh. But real. Then the room became quiet again. Ryan stared at the ceiling. I'm sorry. The words came unexpectedly. I looked at him. What? I'm sorry. His eyes remained fixed above him. I never said it. The anger I thought I still carried suddenly felt distant. Small. Pointless. Because this wasn't the man who broke my heart. This was a dying man trying to carry regrets he might never get the chance to fix. I know, I said softly. Ryan swallowed. Then something changed in his expression. The fear returned. Immediately, his eyes darted toward the hospital window. His breathing became uneven. And for a second I thought he was having another panic attack. Then he whispered, She's here. A chill raced through my body. I turned toward the glass. Nothing. Just the parking lot below. Cars. People. Normal life. Yet Ryan looked absolutely terrified. His hands were shaking. Ryan. He didn't answer. Ryan. His eyes never left the window. Then he pointed. Slowly. Trembling. My gaze followed his finger. And that's when I saw it. Not clearly. Not perfectly. Just enough. A woman standing near the far edge of the parking lot. Motionless. Watching the building. The distance made details impossible to identify. But something about her posture made my stomach turn. Because she looked familiar. Too familiar. Then a bus passed between us. Only for a moment. Maybe 2 seconds. When it moved away, the woman was gone, completely gone. Ryan started crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just exhausted tears. The kind people cry when they're too tired to be afraid anymore. And suddenly I realized something. Whatever was happening, Ryan believed it, completely. That evening I finally met with Sarah in the hospital cafeteria. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in weeks. After a few minutes of conversation, she slid a small notebook across the table. My heart nearly stopped. "The journal," Sarah nodded. "He asked me to give it to you." I stared at the worn black cover. The pages looked heavily used, corners folded, notes sticking out, months of thoughts trapped inside. "Why me?" Sarah looked away. "Because apparently you're in it." The words hit harder than expected. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then I opened the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably Ryan's. Messy, fast, familiar. The earliest entries talked about work, life, relationships, normal things. Then gradually the tone changed. The entries became darker, more paranoid, more frightened. Then I reached one written shortly before the diagnosis, and my blood turned cold. "I saw her again today. Same woman, same face, same eyes. Every time I get close, she disappears." My pulse accelerated. I turned the page. Another entry. "Nobody believes me. They think I'm stressed. But she's real." Another page. "She looks like Claire." I stopped breathing. My name, written clearly, repeated again and again throughout the journal. Page after page, week after week. Then I reached the final completed entry, and everything changed, because this entry wasn't talking about fear. It wasn't talking about the woman. It wasn't talking about being watched. It was talking about me. And what Ryan wrote next made my hands start shaking. "I finally found out what Emma did." I stared at the sentence, confused, then continued reading. The further I read, the worse it became, because according to Ryan, the story I believed for the last year wasn't the full truth. Not even close. And if what he wrote was real, then Emma had been lying to both of us from the very beginning. I read the sentence 3 times before continuing. "I finally found out what Emma did." At first, I didn't understand why that mattered. Emma was ancient history. She was the woman Ryan cheated on me with. The woman who helped destroy our relationship. The woman I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Whatever secret Ryan had discovered couldn't possibly be important enough to explain everything that was happening now. Then I kept reading, and suddenly my entire understanding of the past started falling apart. According to Ryan's journal, the affair hadn't started the way I thought it had. It hadn't even started the way he thought it had. Months after our breakup, Emma confessed something to him during an argument. At first he didn't believe her. Then she showed him proof. Screenshots, messages, deleted conversations, things that couldn't be explained away. My heart pounded harder with every line. Because Emma had been manipulating both of us for months before the relationship finally exploded. She had been deleting messages I sent Ryan whenever she had access to his phone. She had been showing him edited screenshots that made it look like I was secretly talking to other men. Whenever I complained to her about problems in my relationship, she quietly encouraged me to assume the worst. Whenever Ryan vented to her about arguments between us, she pushed him further away from me. She had spent months creating cracks in our relationship while pretending to be our biggest supporter. I felt sick. The journal slipped slightly in my hands, because suddenly I remembered dozens of moments that never made sense at the time. Text messages Ryan claimed he never received. Conversations that seemed to turn hostile for no reason. Arguments that started over misunderstandings neither of us could explain. Back then, I thought relationships were just complicated. Now I wasn't so sure. Ryan wrote that after the breakup, Emma finally admitted the truth because she thought it no longer mattered. She believed they were going to stay together permanently. She thought enough time had passed that he would forgive her. Instead, Ryan broke up with her immediately. The journal described the confrontation in painful detail. The screaming, the accusations, the realization that he had thrown away 4 years with someone he loved because he trusted the wrong person. Halfway through the entry, I had to stop reading. Tears blurred the page. Not because I was angry anymore, because I suddenly understood something horrifying. Ryan and I never really got a chance to fail on our own. Someone had been poisoning the relationship from the inside. Someone we both trusted. Someone we never suspected. I continued reading. The later entries became increasingly desperate. Ryan described trying to contact me multiple times after discovering the truth. He wrote several messages but never sent them. Sometimes because he was afraid I'd never believe him. Sometimes because he felt too guilty. Sometimes because he convinced himself I was happier without him. Then I reached an entry written only weeks before his diagnosis. I drove past Claire's apartment today. My chest tightened. I didn't stop. I didn't knock. I just sat there like an idiot for 20 minutes. I closed my eyes. The image hurt more than I expected. She looked happy. At least I think she did. Maybe that's enough. The words felt like a knife. Because I wasn't happy. Not then. Not now. And somehow we had both spent an entire year believing the other person had moved on. A year wasted. A year neither of us could get back. Then I turned the page. And everything changed. The final entries were different. The handwriting became shakier. More frantic. The sentences shorter. The fear returned. Ryan started writing about the woman again. The one he claimed was following him. The one who looked like me. At first, the entries sounded paranoid. Then they became impossible. Saw her outside the grocery store. She disappeared when I crossed the street. Security camera didn't catch her. Another page. She stood outside my house for almost 10 minutes. Neighbors didn't see anyone. Another. I know how this sounds. I know nobody believes me. But she isn't Claire. She just looks like her. My skin crawled. The final pages were almost unreadable. The writing shook violently across the paper. Several words were crossed out. Entire sentences abandoned halfway through. Then I reached the last complete entry, and my heart nearly stopped. The woman isn't following me. I finally understand. She's trying to warn me. I stared at the sentence, completely frozen. Warning him? About what? I flipped the page desperately. The next page contained only a few lines. The final words Ryan ever wrote. And when I read them, I felt every hair on my arms stand up. If anything happens to me, tell Claire it wasn't her fault. Tell her I know about the ritual. My hands started shaking. No. Ryan couldn't know about the ritual. Nobody knew. I never told anyone. Not Sarah. Not Emma. Not my therapist. Nobody. The journal nearly slipped from my hands. I read the sentence again. Then again. The same result every time. Ryan knew. Somehow he knew. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Because up until that moment, I'd convinced myself there was a logical explanation for everything. The photographs, the paranoia, the woman, the coincidence, all of it. But this made no sense. There was no explanation. Ryan should not have known about that night. He should not have known about the paper, the fire, the ashes, none of it. Yet there it was, written in his own handwriting, weeks before his death. I sat in the hospital cafeteria staring at the journal while dozens of people walked around me. Nobody noticed the panic building inside my chest. Nobody noticed my hands trembling. Nobody noticed my entire reality coming apart. Finally, I looked up at Sarah. My voice barely worked. Did Ryan ever explain this? She frowned. Explain what? I showed her the page. Her face immediately went pale, because she had never seen that entry either. And judging by her reaction, she was just as terrified as I was. Then Sarah whispered something that made the situation even worse. There was one thing Ryan kept saying near the end. I swallowed hard. What? She looked directly into my eyes. He said if you ever read the journal. Her voice shook. You needed to see what was hidden inside the back cover. The room suddenly felt very, very quiet. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't sure I wanted answers anymore. I stared at Sarah for several seconds before speaking. Neither of us seemed eager to move. Neither of us seemed eager to learn whatever secret Ryan had left behind. Because deep down, we both knew the same thing. Some mysteries stop being interesting once they become personal. and this one had become very personal. Slowly, I opened the journal again. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Ryan's final instruction echoed inside my head. Look inside the back cover. I flipped through the remaining pages. Most were blank. Then I reached the back. At first, I didn't see anything. Just cardboard, fabric, the normal construction of a notebook. Then I noticed a small tear along the inside edge. Something was hidden there. Carefully, I pulled it free. A folded piece of paper. Old, worn, yellowed around the edges. My pulse immediately accelerated, because I recognized the handwriting before I even opened it.
Mine.
The paper unfolded slowly, and the moment I saw the contents, the world seemed to stop. It was the ritual, the exact ritual, my handwriting, my words, Ryan's name, everything. For a second I couldn't breathe. I just stared, unable to understand what I was looking at, unable to understand how it was possible, because I remembered burning it. I remembered watching it turn to ash. I remembered burying those ashes behind my apartment. Yet somehow, here it was, inside Ryan's journal. My stomach twisted violently. This isn't possible. Sarah looked confused. What is it? I handed her the paper. Her eyes widened immediately. You wrote this. I nodded. Slowly, mechanically. My mind was racing too fast to form complete thoughts. How did Ryan get it? Who gave it to him? Why did he keep it? Nothing made sense. Then I noticed writing on the back. Different handwriting. Ryan's handwriting. A note. Short. Simple. Final. I started reading. Claire, if you found this, then I wasn't crazy. The room suddenly felt colder. I found this in my mailbox 3 weeks after the diagnosis. I froze. 3 weeks after the diagnosis. Not before. After. My heart pounded harder. I don't know who put it there. I don't know where it came from. But I know you didn't send it. A tear rolled down my cheek. Ryan continued. The first time I saw it, I laughed. The second time, I got scared. The third time, I realized somebody wanted me to find it. My chest tightened painfully. The note continued. I never blamed you. Not once. I closed my eyes. Because for months I had convinced myself that if Ryan knew about the ritual, he would hate me, blame me, fear me. Instead, he spent his final months trying to protect me from that guilt. Then I reached the final paragraph. The paragraph that changed everything. The woman isn't following me. She's following whoever left this. I stared at the words, confused. Ryan's handwriting became shakier, less controlled, more frightened. I saw her again yesterday, closer than ever. She looked exactly like Claire, but when she smiled, my pulse quickened. The sentence ended abruptly. The next line continued lower on the page. And when I read it, every hair on my body stood up. It wasn't Claire. The room went silent. Neither Sarah nor I spoke. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt genuine fear. Not guilt, not sadness, fear. Then I reached Ryan's final sentence. The last thing he ever wrote. The last message he left behind. Whatever happened to me wasn't your fault. Please don't spend your life carrying a punishment that belongs to somebody else. That broke me, completely, because suddenly all the anger was gone. All the fear, all the confusion. What remained was grief. Pure grief. For the relationship we lost. For the years we wasted. For the conversations that never happened. For the future that never got a chance to exist. I cried harder than I had since discovering the grave. Not because I thought the ritual worked. Not because I thought something supernatural happened. But because Ryan spent his final days trying to make sure I didn't hate myself after he was gone. Even after everything. Even after the betrayal. Even after the breakup. Even after losing me. Part of him still cared. Months later, Ryan died. The cancer moved faster than anyone expected. The funeral was small, quiet, rainy. The kind of day that seems unfairly appropriate. I stood in the back, away from everyone else, listening to stories about a man I once thought I knew completely. Listening to people talk about his kindness, his humor, his mistakes, his regrets. And for the first time in years, I stopped thinking about the worst thing he ever did. I started remembering the best parts instead. The road trips, the late-night talks, the plans, the dreams, the person I loved before everything fell apart. After the service ended, most people left. I stayed. The cemetery eventually became quiet. Just me, the wind, and a fresh grave. I knelt down and placed a letter on the wet grass. An apology, not for the ritual, not for the breakup, for the silence, for never reaching out, for letting pride win, for wasting time neither of us knew was running out. Then I whispered something I wished I'd said years earlier. I forgive you. The words felt strange, heavy, necessary. For a moment nothing happened, just silence. Then a soft breeze moved through the cemetery. The kind of breeze that arrives unexpectedly and disappears just as quickly. I smiled through tears, and finally stood to leave. As I walked away, I noticed something tucked beneath a small stone near the grave. A folded note, old, weathered. I almost ignored it, almost, but curiosity won. I picked it up, opened it, and immediately froze. The handwriting wasn't Ryan's. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone I recognized. The paper contained only one sentence that still keeps me awake at night. You were never the one being watched. I looked around the cemetery instantly, heart pounding. The wind moved through the trees. Leaves rustled softly. The graveyard remained empty, completely empty. I never discovered who wrote that note. I never discovered who placed my ritual inside Ryan's mailbox. I never discovered who the woman in the photographs really was. Maybe there was a logical explanation. Maybe there wasn't. At some point I stopped searching, because some questions don't have answers, and some answers only create bigger questions. But one thing I know for certain is this: revenge never healed me, hatred never helped me, and guilt nearly destroyed me. Forgiveness was the only thing that finally set me free. If this story stayed with you until the end, comment "Forgiveness is harder than revenge," and subscribe to Niver Tales for more unforgettable Reddit stories that stay in your mind long after the video ends.